But if Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff and he does not back down. You can ask Caine about that. The new Iranian regime should know that by now. This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be wiser than the last.
Those are the latest words from U.S. defense leaders as the U.S. looks to negotiate a deal with Iran in the ongoing war.
The Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth saying President Trump is working to make that deal happen, and Iranian leaders know the terms.
All right, joining us now, retired Marine Colonel Mark Caine. Colonel, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time. And to start, as we normally do, what was your thoughts on what we heard from the Pentagon?
Well, there are a couple of takeaways, and the first one was what we just heard. That is that the administration is looking for a deal, and that there has been regime change. That signals maybe that the administration is willing to stop where it is and call, what has occurred regime change, and they've accomplished one of their goals. Another interesting thing is that Hegseth appeared to say that opening the Straits of Hormuz was not among our goals, that was the responsibility of allies and partners, and we would focus on ballistic missiles, the Navy, and nuclear. So again, the president signaled that maybe that they're looking for the terms of a deal.
And Colonel, we heard briefly from the Secretary just talking about boots on the ground. It was a question from reporters. We know that the 82nd Airborne Division is in the region there. Obviously, when Americans hear that troops are heading to the region, that does stoke some fears. What does that mission look like now with just having troops in the region? What exactly are they doing right now?
You have to be careful that when we talk about boots on the ground, this is a very limited boots on the ground. The phrase conjures up images, as you note, about Desert Storm and the invasion of Iraq in 2003, where there were hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops and, in effect, were marching on our adversary's capital. That's not happening here. There are 7,000 U.S. ground forces in the region or headed there. The 82nd Airborne, for example, has sent 2,000, not the whole 14,000 out of the division. So it's a very limited force that will likely focus, if it's used, on seizure of offshore islands, not going to land on the mainland, not going to march on Tehran, but could seize islands, Karg Island, or some islands in the strait.
Colonel Caine, if you could take us inside, what you do for the Center for Strategic and International Studies as an advisor, what we hear in terms of what Iran is saying publicly and what they're saying behind closed doors. We heard from the White House press secretary that even though they're saying negotiations aren't on, what's happening behind closed doors may be different. Can you kind of take us as to how these negotiations may work? Is that true that they may be saying one thing publicly, but behind closed doors, we may be closer to a deal than they may lead on?
Well, it's certainly possible that behind closed doors, they're closer to a deal. Both sides are posturing for public opinion and their domestic audiences, while maybe they're negotiating and making progress. But you have to keep in mind that there are 6 parties that have to agree to this deal. It's the U.S. and Israel. It's whoever it is we're negotiating with, and they've identified that official as, I think, the Speaker of the Parliament. There's the Revolutionary Guards. They're the ones with the guns. They're the ones who really control things in Iran. Then we have the Gulf states, and finally the rest of the world, particularly Europe and Japan, which rely on this oil and need to get the strait open. So there are a lot of people who have to agree here, and not at all clear that they all have.
And when we talk about those negotiations, right, again, whatever's happening behind closed doors, what both sides are saying, whether these talks are happening or not happening, we know that the position that the Secretary has talked about is making sure Iran cannot make a nuclear weapon ever again. Iran obviously digging in its heels saying, yeah, we're not going to do that. At what point, though, would we have to reach for Iran to maybe agree to those terms, or where is any wiggle room from the U.S. side?
Well, Iran so far has taken a very hard line. They have refused to give up the right to enrich uranium, and that's been their argument for 2 decades. They argue that as a sovereign nation, they can build ballistic missiles if that's what they want. And of course, they'd argue that they could rebuild their Navy and their military capabilities that could threaten the Strait. It's conceivable that we might make a deal where there was some inspection. In fact, that's part of the U.S. Points for making a final deal. But the Iranians would have to walk way back, and we'd have to give up some, items also. In the background for Israel, I think their non-negotiable demand is that they want to be able to go back if they ever feel threatened. So, Iran saying, well, we want a commitment that we will never be attacked again. The Israelis won't agree to that.
Colonel Caine, as this war continues to drag on, do you feel like the goal line has changed for the Trump administration from what they originally set out to be, and they've kind of made it closer to hopefully reach a deal and end the conflict?
There's always been some tension with the Trump administration about what the goal is. Of course, the president started off saying regime change, and he clearly had in mind the population rising up and sweeping away the current theocratic regime. Now he seems to have backed off that. I think with time they're getting a more unified position, although if opening the strait is not part of that, that's something new in terms of what the end state is, and there'll be a lot of discussion about that.
Colonel, the Secretary and General Caine talked about dynamic strikes. That was something that, for those of us who are unfamiliar, a little bit new. Can you talk about what exactly that is and how that is a progression in the war?
Yeah. The big progression is our ability to operate relatively freely over Iran. That allows us to use less expensive but shorter range munitions. Apparently, we're flying B-52s over Iran, and of course, they are extremely vulnerable. So that means they don't have much air defense left. Dynamic targeting means that an aircraft will go into the theater, will go into the area of operations, either with a tentative target or no target, and then it will be assigned a target. And when U.S. forces are in combat, very often those targets come from the forces. So some force will be, in contact with the enemy. They'll call in an airstrike, and that will then be relayed to one of the aircraft that's, on station and ready to respond very quickly. Here, it sounds like maybe responding to reconnaissance capabilities we have, like we have drones that are flying around Iran, and maybe they spotted something, gave the target to the aircraft. But it means that we have a lot of aircraft flying over Iran waiting for targets. That means we have real air dominance over Iran.
Colonel Caine, last one for you. We heard from the Secretary in terms of honoring our NATO defense agreements that the President has asked for assistance from some of our European allies, and in response we've gotten hesitation and questions, and in some cases just outright denials to assist in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, for example. Do you see anything coming out of this conflict with Iran where it changes our relationship with NATO?
It's possible, but I think unlikely. It's important to keep in mind that there's nothing in the NATO alliance that says that they will come and help us in the Middle East. In fact, the United States insisted on containing the alliance to Europe because the United States at that time didn't want to get involved in the European colonial empires. So they're under no responsibility under the alliance to come and help us out. On the other hand, I think the Secretary and the President make a reasonable argument that they are the ones who really depend on this oil, and they should step up and help out to get that flowing, not as an alliance commitment, but just as an economic survival commitment.
All right, retired Colonel Mark Caine joining us once again, as always. Thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.